Ever wonder what it takes to manage a disaster situation efficiently and effectively? Well, the answer lies in understanding the principles of disaster management. Disaster management is a comprehensive approach that encompasses a range of activities designed to maintain control over disaster and emergency situations. It involves planning, response, recovery, and most importantly, mitigation and preparedness. This approach is essential because disasters, whether natural or man-made, can strike at any time, causing massive disruption and loss. They can severely affect individuals, communities, and entire nations. The goal of disaster management is to minimize the damage, ensure swift recovery, and reduce the overall impact on people and infrastructure. In particular, emergency responders play a critical role in this process. Their understanding of disaster management principles can significantly influence the outcome of a disaster situation, helping save lives and restore normalcy faster. So remember, understanding disaster management can be the difference between chaos and order during a crisis. So, what does it mean to be prepared for a disaster? Well, let's delve into this concept together. Disaster preparedness is all about being ready. It's about having a plan in place that enables us to respond effectively when disaster strikes. It's about understanding the risks we face and taking proactive measures to mitigate those risks. It's not just about reacting to a disaster after it happens, but anticipating it and being ready to act when the time comes. At its heart, disaster preparedness is a proactive mindset. It's about understanding that disasters, whether natural or man-made, can and will occur. It's about accepting this reality and making the necessary preparations to ensure that when disaster strikes, we're not caught off guard. So, what does a disaster preparedness plan look like? Well, it involves several key elements. First, it requires an assessment of the potential risks we face. This could be anything from earthquakes and floods to fires and terrorist attacks. Once we understand the risks, we can then develop strategies to manage them. These strategies might involve things like building evacuation plans, emergency supply kits, and communication systems. It's about ensuring that we have the resources and information we need to respond effectively. It's about training and education so that everyone knows what to do when disaster strikes. But preparedness isn't just something that should be confined to individuals. It's equally important for our critical infrastructures. These are the systems and facilities that are vital to our society and economy, like our power grids, transportation systems, and hospitals. These infrastructures need to be resilient, able to withstand disasters, and quickly recover from them. That's why disaster preparedness involves things like building codes and regulations, infrastructure upgrades, and emergency response plans. It's about ensuring that our society as a whole is prepared to withstand and recover from disasters. So, to sum it up, disaster preparedness is about being proactive. It's about understanding the risks we face and taking the necessary steps to mitigate those risks. It's about having a plan in place and being ready to act when disaster strikes. Disaster preparedness is the first step to effectively managing any disaster scenario. Now, what happens when an entire community gets involved in disaster preparedness? Well, that's where the concept of a community-based disaster preparedness plan comes into play. It's a proactive approach that mobilizes an entire community to prepare for potential disasters, enhancing the collective resilience in the face of adversity. At the heart of this plan is the active participation of the community members themselves. They are the ones who know their locality, its vulnerabilities, and its strengths best. Their involvement in the planning process ensures that the strategies implemented are tailored to their specific needs, resulting in more effective preparedness measures. Community-based disaster preparedness plans can take different forms, depending on the type of disaster and the specific needs of the community. For example, a coastal community might focus on preparing for hurricanes, while a community located in a seismic zone might prioritize earthquake preparedness. The key to a successful community-based disaster preparedness plan is continuous education and regular drills. These activities not only equip community members with necessary skills and knowledge, but also instill a sense of confidence and preparedness. It's also important to note that these plans are not static. They need to be reviewed and updated regularly to account for changes in the community and the evolving nature of potential threats. In essence, a community-based disaster preparedness plan is a powerful tool that turns vulnerability into resilience. It brings people together, fostering unity and cooperation in the face of potential disaster. A prepared community is a resilient community. But can we actually mitigate a disaster? What does that mean? Well, let's break it down. Disaster mitigation refers to measures taken to minimize the impact of a disaster, to reduce loss of life and property by lessening the impact of disasters. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. Now, you may wonder, how can we mitigate something as unpredictable and uncontrollable as a natural disaster? While we can't prevent earthquakes or hurricanes, we can certainly make plans and take actions that lessen their blow. So how does one go about this? Well, there are several strategies to consider. First on the list is hazard-specific mitigation. This involves identifying potential hazards in a particular area and taking steps to reduce the risks associated with them. For example, if you live in a flood-prone area, you could build your homes on stilts or create effective drainage systems. Next comes infrastructure mitigation. This involves designing and constructing buildings and other structures to withstand the forces unleashed by disasters. From earthquake-resistant buildings to flood barriers, the aim is to ensure our built environment can stand up to the task. Then there's environmental mitigation. This strategy focuses on protecting and restoring the natural environment as a buffer against disasters. Healthy ecosystems like wetlands and forests can absorb a significant amount of the impact from disasters such as floods and landslides. Lastly, we have policy and planning mitigation. This strategy involves governments and organizations creating and implementing policies and plans that promote disaster-resistant practices. It could be as simple as enforcing building codes or as complex as developing a comprehensive disaster management plan. Remember, the goal of these strategies is not to stop disasters from happening. That's beyond our control. The goal is to minimize the impact when they do happen. It's about saving lives, protecting communities, and preserving our way of life. Disaster mitigation strategies are crucial in reducing the harmful effects of disasters. Because the key to surviving a disaster is not just reacting to it, but preparing for it. So, how do all these concepts come together? Enter the disaster management cycle. Think of the disaster management cycle as a wheel that keeps turning, each phase flowing into the next. It consists of 4 main phases: preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Let's start with preparedness. This is the phase where we plan for a disaster before it strikes. We arm ourselves with knowledge, resources, and systems, all aimed at reducing the impact of disasters. It's akin to studying for an exam. The better prepared you are, the better you'll perform. Next up is response. This is the immediate reaction to a disaster. It's the moment we put our plans into action, focusing on saving lives and minimizing damage. It's the ambulance rushing to the scene, the firemen battling the flames, the rescue team pulling survivors from the rubble. Once the immediate threat has passed, we enter the recovery phase. This is where we start to rebuild, restore, and rehabilitate. It's about getting communities back on their feet, repairing infrastructure, and restoring services. It's the collective sigh of relief and the beginning of healing. The last phase is mitigation. This is where we learn from the past and plan for the future. We analyze what went wrong, what went right, and how we can do better next time. It's about implementing measures to reduce the impact of future disasters, like building flood defenses or improving building codes. Each phase of the disaster management cycle is interconnected, each one feeding into the next. Preparedness leads to an effective response, which sets the stage for successful recovery, which informs future mitigation strategies. It's a continuous ongoing process because disasters are not one-off events, they're part of our world. The disaster management cycle is a tool, a guide, a roadmap. It's a way for us to understand, prepare for, and manage disasters, to reduce their impact and safeguard our communities. It's about resilience, adaptation, and survival. The disaster management cycle is a continuous process that ensures our readiness, response, recovery, and resilience in the face of disasters. So, are you ready to take on the role of a disaster management expert? Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered today. We've journeyed through the intricate world of disaster management, learning about its key components: preparedness and mitigation. Remember, these concepts aren't just for emergency responders, they're for everyone. We started with preparedness, understanding its nature, and the importance of having a disaster preparedness plan, a plan that not only caters to individuals but also to infrastructure, ensuring minimal damage and maximum safety. Then we delved into community-based disaster preparedness plan, emphasizing the power of unity and collective action. We reiterated how communities, when equipped with the right knowledge and tools, can become formidable forces against disasters. Next, we explored the realm of mitigation. We highlighted how it's not just about responding to disasters, but also about implementing strategies that reduce or eliminate long-term risks. The goal here is to lessen the impact of disasters on our lives and infrastructure. Finally, we connected all these elements in the disaster management cycle, illustrating a continuous process that integrates the management of risks and the management of disaster response. As we conclude this enlightening journey, let's not forget the role each one of us plays. Our collective preparedness and mitigation efforts can make a substantial difference. So let's continue learning, adapting, and improving our response to disasters. Subscribe for more because you won't find me later. Stay informed, stay prepared, and let's make a difference together.